another episode of Seriously Joking. We are joined, of course, I got my man Nube One. Nube, how you feeling, man?
I'm good. What's up?
Hey, nothing much, man. We're joined by Don Goes In, man. And we're gonna get right into trying to reboot the system. Don, how you feeling out there, man?
Oh, I'm good.
All right, man. Just to go and set the whole thing up, we had been discussing, police reform. And in the midst of discussing the police reform, we have come to the conclusion that you can't just stop at the police. The police are the foundation, and it goes up, but it goes up from not only from the police to the DA, to the judges, to the prison, all the way up to the presidency. We've seen in America, period, um, the different tools and things that they have used to slander and to slander the black man and to justify the killing of the black man and the oppression of black people and people that are not of the Caucasian race. Shortly thereafter, slavery. We have Jim Crow. You have President showing Birth of a Nation in the White House. You have at the turn of the century, I think it was around about the beginning of the 19th century when they started introducing heroin and cocaine into like the black community. And then they turned around and told law enforcement, oh, like the 32 rounds don't, you know what I mean? They can't, 32 rounds aren't strong enough to bring down a black man. You know what I mean? If you're on that heroin, you're going to need something stronger. So the police force switched from the 32 to the 38. We also have like the similar whole thing, you know what I mean, when it comes down to like these crack laws. Oh, no, man, this isn't regular cocaine. This is something much stronger. We can't sentence them on the same existing laws that we have because this is like 100 times greater, and so on and so forth. And you have it started with like Nixon and his war on drugs, and even people in his administration saying like, yeah, of course, this was a war against blacks. This is a war against poor. You can't come out and say that, so you just have to say like it's a war against drugs. And then the famous Hillary Clinton speech, where she's pretty much calling us predators. And as we were discussing right before we had started, Joe Biden saying that there's no way that we can be reformed and we need to be removed from society. So I would like to start the discussion off, within our lifetime, with the crack laws and how those laws are still affecting us today when you start talking about sentencing, even though some of like the mandatory sentencing and different guidelines have gone away, you still see judges using those same guidelines from the 80s, from the 90s today. 90 something percent, it's being reported that they're using these same guidelines against petty crimes and petty drug offenses, whereas um, you have pedophiles where judges only use like the recommended sentencing 40% of the time. So if you get caught with drugs, you're going to do your time and probably have to do the whole time. Whereas you touching, messing around with children, then, there's some little wiggle room in between it. But again, it starts with the police because they're the ones that's out on the streets. They're the ones that actually bring in the cases to the DAs. And when Bloomberg was in office, for instance, he had like the stop and frisk. And one of New York's top cops now today has a very thick folder. Um, Alleging that of misconduct, saying that he was doing strip searches in New York back in the 80s, stripping people right, you know what I mean, right on the street. One guy said that he did a cavity check on him so rough he thought he needed to go to the hospital to get checked out. But these things are dismissed constantly, and it's my viewpoint that the police are pretty much, you know what I mean, that wall between the haves and the have-nots. So you can't there's an agenda to protect the police because the police are keeping the haves from the have-nots or the have-nots from the haves, and it doesn't matter what tactics they use, even though you see crime dropping year and year in certain cities, but yet they still increasing the police force. New, like to get your opinion on Because I think the whole, whole police system and system of policing needs to be reformed and changed. I think that money should go to social workers and other different things. But how do you feel?
Yeah, I feel that it should be, I'm all for defunding the police, especially in the sense of getting military grade vehicles and materials out of the police hands, because they're only using that to deal with American citizens, which is asinine. So yeah, I'm for getting rid of that. Then the question is, what do they do with those materials?
Right.
Because nothing's good going to come from the materials. So it's like, whether you burn them, destroy them, I don't know. That's another thing. But yeah, I am more into the idea of getting into the concept of community policing. Um, just kind of building the community and not necessarily completely eliminating the police force, but eliminating the need for excessive policing and eliminating creating a atmosphere for more compassionate interactions with the public, where you don't have to worry about a person whose job it is that's supposed to de-escalate a situation is escalating it, and then you turn out as a civilian having to be the bigger person or the adult in the room trying to de-escalate a potentially deadly interaction with a public servant whose taxes you pay
Right.
to for them to put food on the table and feed their families. So yeah, that's how I feel.
Don, what do you think about like the whole police reform?
Yeah, I'm with it. I'm open to. I'm not familiar with every aspect of what they mean by reforming it, but I'm for it. I'm for um, reforming the judicial system.
Oh yeah.
From local to Supreme Court. Uh, One thing I was looking into was civil forfeiture laws, where the police can just if they stop you, say, oh yeah, I smoke weed, coming out your car, pull you over, then they find some cash and they can just take it, and then you have to fight to get it back, and it turns out that the majority of people do get their money back, but it's at a certain cost, because whether it's obtaining a lawyer or the paperwork fight that you have to do to get your money back, and then there's quite a few people who don't have the money to secure lawyers or things of that nature, and then they just out of the cash. So and there's that qualified immunity uh, where it's kind of like um, a twofold law. It like protects a police officer from being harassed when they're just doing their job, like being targeted by quote unquote weirdos, or people who have an axe to grind with them, who are actually conducting themselves properly. But it also unfortunately protects those cops who are doing whatever they want to do. And I don't know if we can. Hopefully, we might be able to salvage some of James's interview from a couple weeks ago about it. But I think that kind of goes into the concept of culture. The culture in the in policing, the culture in the judicial system. So yeah, there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot to do. So I'm eager to find out like more of what they're talking about. Even the people who are talking about abolish the police, I'd like to see like what their end game is and how you can kind of incorporate some of their ideas into something that may not be so quote unquote harsh to people,
Yeah.
the average person. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm one of the people. That's what's up. I'm not mad. It's on the record. I'm not mad. I ain't mad.
All
Don't
right,
be,
so
don't get me. Saying I'm just like, I'm with it. How do we do it? As long as we're like, we find a way to do it, I'm with it.
Hey, I got the answer for you.
okay, what is it?
Anybody, any of y'all watch westerns back in the day?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Wild Wild West. Everybody strap up. They gotta go.
Yeah.
Man, it's too far down the road to salvage them. If they really want to change, the whole police system has to be thrown out the door and start over. It's all corrupt. Yes, they are good cops. If anybody get mad at me and send me some hate mail, they are some, and I got a few. We got a few cousins, and I got a few friends that are police officers, and they generally are good people. But the system itself is only set up to oppress people. It's not. When the last time the police stopped the crime or protect and serve somebody? I don't know when they did. They just show up after the crime is over, and they file a report if they do that. So it definitely needs to be an agency set up to protect and serve, and that's not what they're doing.
So you would like to see the whole police department abolished?
I would like to see the police department abolished. I'd like to see every judge that's been in place. I think the whole system has to go because it's the same thing we got going on with Congress. You got all these same people that have been there for the last 20, 30 years that committed all types of crimes against people, violated their rights, and you give them some diversity training and you think they're going to change, they're not going to change.
One of the biggest problems that I see is that there is very little discipline in terms of people actually being terminated from their position when we start talking about the police, and it doesn't really matter what it is that they do. Then you have the next level of that's a part of like the justice system, and that's the DAs, and above them are the judges. Unfortunately, fortunately, you know what I mean? Like, you can vote out the sheriff. You can vote him out. Police chief, he's appointed. The police officers, and not too many people have citizen oversight committees. And even some of the ones that do have citizen oversight committees, they still tend to side with the police officers because it gives people this false sense of security. Like you said, most of the time they don't show up in time enough to do anything. Even when, you know what I mean, they're like right there. They don't show up in time enough to do anything, and they take the report and so on and so forth. Um, the abolish the whole police thing. I'm not too sure if I agree with you on that because we just have too many. There's a certain level of criminal element that we actually need them to deal with. Um,
They don't deal with them though.
I agree with that, but we need them to. That's why I said we need them to deal with them and everybody else. You know what I mean? Be able to protect yourself, be able to protect your home and your property. I'm with you 100%. Because unfortunately, in too many cases, we see young guns running around doing something, even old guns. But it was think about this, man. When you start talking about the society and the Justice Department, all of us are about the same age. So if we have friends that got locked up in the 80s and the early 90s for some type of drug offense, and by a major drug offense, believe it or not, was to have enough crack on you that would equal a pack of sugar. That was a major crime offense, man. You know what I mean? That was major. That means you were carrying your weight. And when you start looking at the numbers and the weights that they put on like these sentences, some of these dudes, man, are going on 50 years old and just now coming home. Some of these cats were in their 40s and just now coming home. You have to understand that they've spent the majority of their life, you know what I mean, as an adult in prison. So now you're at 50 years old, you have no skills, and you have a drug offense on your record. What are you going to do the rest of your life?
I mean, that's the other side of the system. I mean, the police supposed to protect and serve, and once you get incarcerated, you're supposed to be reformed. So that's why I say the whole system got to go, because nobody's doing their job. They're not reforming anybody. They put you in a worse situation, and you end out in the street. You got to fight for your life, and they send you back out on the street, and then they put this felon badge on your name, the way you can't even get back in society and get a job and work and take care of your family. So it's an endless cycle where you end up back in prison or you end up dead on the streets. So that's why I say the whole system, man. That's just my perspective on how everything needs to go. But we all know that's not going to happen. The whole system, they're not going to let the system fall, because it's this fantasy that you're being protective and it's working for you until the bad guy come in your house.
Right. We have a president that's in place now that claims to be law and order, which to me is just code. Any president that gets up there and talks about law and order is just code, because these are the types of things that were said and carried out to be able to carry out like these incredible prison sentences on people of color. Whether we're talking about down in Mississippi, where they passed laws saying that you were a vagrant, and then the police, you know what I mean, which was nothing more than old why can't I was thinking like these people? They're just overseers. They just went around and rounded you up and was like, oh, he not working, take you to the magistrate. And the magistrate, like, oh, we're locking you up. Now you're going to go work on this plantation because you're a vagrant. To re-enslave you.
That's been a law for a long time, since slavery.
And
that vagrancy law.
Right.
Yeah, that pretty much came after slavery.
Right.
Well, like super, majorly enforced after.
And it was during slavery too, for those free people of color category during slavery. If you got caught without a job, then the same thing happened to you. So yeah, that's been going on for a long time. But it seems like the whole thing is set up.
It is
to get everybody back in the system, and make you a slave so they can make money off.
Anytime a teacher can call the police on a child holding a neon Nerf gun during a Zoom meeting, during a Zoom class meeting or school meeting or what have you, and the police come out and do that, no one contacts, the parents, no one verifies that this young boy has, supervision at home. It's a Nerf gun. It's neon green or neon orange. I forgot which one it was. And the police come to the house. Like they ready to lock this dude up. Then the school turns around and suspends him for 5 days, saying that he brought a facsimile gun to school. And the police telling him like, yeah, well, if you would have did this in a real school, then we would have locked you up and filed criminal charges against you. Like, what I mean? Huh?
I missed that story.
Oh yeah, it was last week.
At the house?
Yeah, they came to his house.
Wow.
Yeah, man. And so when it goes to exactly what you were saying. The whole point to me of like this system is to try to get a charge on you. It doesn't matter what it is. It's to get a charge on you. And no matter how many studies and everything is done, that they have like a system where they grade so-called criminals or people that have been arrested and awaiting trial as to what degree of a criminal this person is. And they have shown side by side, you have a white defendant that has been, the one guy saying he had several armed robberies, kidnapping, and something else. But he was only graded a 2. I think it's from 0 to 10. He was only graded a 2 or 3. Well, yeah, the black guy that had some type of petty theft misdemeanor, and they graded him an 8. He's a much greater threat than this guy that's already done robbed people on robbery several times. So when you start to look at this, and when you start to look at just in the last few months, if you go and you Google how many sheriffs and police
Japanese.
thank you, that have resigned because of their racial remarks, racial posts, racial attitudes. PG County, the biggest black, richest black county in America, just had their police chief resign. He ended up replacing Hispanic guy that the department grew under. He replaces him, and only the white guys are getting advanced in their careers there. No one else. One Hispanic officer says that he complained about one of the people, I guess under him, because he was a lieutenant. He complained about one of the people under him using entirely too much force when they went out to serve a warrant on someone, and they tried to demote him. So now they
Wow.
have a class action lawsuit. The blacks and the Hispanics have a class action lawsuit against PG County. We have several officers have class action lawsuits against different counties in California and in Texas. The racism is within the police department is so ridiculous that not only are you racist against the people that you're supposed to sworn and protect, but you also engage in it with the people that you serve with. The same guy that sit right next to you in the car. The same guy that's supposed to have your back when you're going through a door. You discriminate against him just as much as anybody else. So yeah, I think that there needs to be a serious overhaul. Now, how that's going to happen, I know we have talked about it before. I think that a good amount of that budget needs to go into social work. Even bigger part of that budget needs to go back into education. Um, Not only education, but then also when I say education, I mean not only like the public schools, but put money into trade schools. Because when we were in school, you could take up a trade. You could take up, you know what I mean, auto mechanic. You could take up plumbing. You could take up electrician. This got people jobs. It's not, you know what I mean? When you remove that from the school and then you figure out like, oh man, how come nobody's getting a job with you know what I mean, with the high school diploma? Everybody's not college material.
Wow. Hey James, I remember when I was in, I went to Crossland took vocational school. I believe it was 11th, 12th grade, and I think that was when Reagan was in office. And it reminded me of two things that he did that I would never forget. Ketchup is a vegetable for your lunch, and the other thing was in the carpentry class with no wood because vocational school ain't have no budget. So we sat around and played with pallets we got from places, but we didn't have no wood to go out and build no house or nothing in carpentry class. So, like you say, as you're right, the problem is in every aspect of the system, they pulling out every ladder that we have to, pull ourselves up, and it's on purpose.
Yeah, it
Because,
is.
yeah, it's definitely on purpose. We had that, we had activities and stuff for after school, was things to do to to give these kids something to do, but they systematically have made it. It has to go because you can't reform these people. To me, because being a fireman and many years took diversity class, and every year it never got any better. You walked in there the same way you walked out of there. The only thing you may have learned was don't laugh if you pull up on the scene and you doing medical care on a transvestite or somebody that and call them by the name that they refer to.
Hmm.
That's the only thing we got out of that. You didn't get anything. You didn't change none of these people's minds. They was racist when they came in, and they was racist when they came out.
Right.
And they just have a system that backs up their racism. So and they look out for each other too, which is the other problem. So, and to me, when we talk about solutions, and it has to start from the top. I don't think you're going to do anything on the local level without changing legislation that affects all of them. And the only way you can do it is affect them civilly and send them to jail. I mean, it got to be a citizen's bill of rights that specifically targets the things that they're doing. I don't care if you're racist. I worked with plenty of guys that was racist that we're talking the firehouse, but if you see them on the street after it, they act like they don't know you.
Oh yeah.
So your racism doesn't matter. But when you know at the end of the day you're gonna lose that pension and you're going to jail and your family not gonna eat if you don't do your job, then that's the only thing that they respect. But go ahead.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, that's true because and that's where like the immunity comes in. That gives them, you know what I mean, this parachute. And I think if they didn't do anything else at all, which they're probably not going to do, and watching some of like these hearings on like the George Floyd bill, they're probably they're not going to do anything. Um, is that just remove that, make these guys accountable for their own actions, and then maybe you'll stop and think before you pull the trigger. Maybe you'll stop and think before you have like you're smashing someone's head into the concrete, before you're kneeing this guy in his ribs until you break his ribs, break his arm, you know, all for a false arrest when the guy never actually committed a crime in the first place. And that's the part of the problem. You know what I mean? That
Or they might have called you too. You might have called the police.
oh yeah,
Got your ass whooped or shot, killed.
Yeah, they don't care.
yeah. I was watching a video the other day. A guy got robbed. He was in the midst of being robbed. Liquor store. He calls the police. The police come in. They come busting through the door, pointing guns at the owner, who actually was happened to be black, and let the robber, who was white, walk right out the door.
Did you see the one about the hotel?
It's
The robbery was going on in the hotel.
Oh yeah, and they wasted time. They let the white guy walk out, and they wasting time holding guns on the black guy. When the call came across, it was a white male.
And the manager said he repeated to him the description.
Yeah, it does.
He went right outside and put the gun in the first black guy he saw face.
It doesn't matter, man. It's like the three kids out there in L.A. Three kids out there in L.A. being held at knife point. Somebody calls the police and like, yeah, man, somebody has like these three boys, you know what I mean, held at knife point. The police show up and they break out rifles and aiming at the three boys, and everybody's yelling like they're the victims.
They know the same Farida.
Yeah,
It's tripping.
yeah.
People were telling them like, yo, that's my, they called you. They're not the ones. They're just like, finger on the trigger with rifles with some kids who they got bikes or some shit. They even have like no weapons, nothing.
Yeah. So then when
Let me say.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say something real quick about the whole, tough on crime stuff that Trump's big about, but also Biden is very big about as well.
Oh yeah.
One of my main issues with it is tough on crime always means, we're tough on crime that poor people do.
Exactly.
Tough on quote unquote black crime, brown crime, whatever. We're not tough on, these financial crimes that that are the root of a lot of these other crimes that, come. That always bothers me. It's like, all right, you're being tough on crime, but you're like skimming the bottom of the barrel. You're not even getting, what I'm saying? You're bottom for apples, but you're at the bottom of the barrel. The apples are at the top. The apples are floating at the top. You're at the bottom. So, and I get it. Everybody's concerned with violent crime. Nobody's a fan of that, and those people need to be held accountable. But that doesn't mean the whole community needs to be over policed. Because for me, I think one of the wildest things I think about is we're all old enough to remember all the black communities before crack, before and
Yes.
after crack, and it's like night and day. Like I remember, playing
I
little
ain't that
league.
old.
Right. Playing little league. All right, well, maybe you said you was high school.
No, I'm joking.
Don't let that dude lie to you.
I'm
I think I was still
joking.
in middle school during Reagan. But yeah, so to see that the difference of, I just can't imagine being a kid that grew up after, the aftermath of the crack era, the crime bill, and mass incarceration, and basically the criminalization of the whole black community. Somebody growing up like in the '90s and not knowing what it was like, growing up in the '70s when you not only had like some sense of community, you also had social programs that kind of filled in the gaps for a lot of people. Summer programs.
Right.
We used to go to hit the different summer lunches. There were like 3 different spots we would hit, at least 2. You know what I'm saying? Guys be going back and forth, be like, yo, they got the hot packs there. They got the hot joint. Word. Go there. And just seeing once I got older and got like old enough to start playing Pony League, where all that stuff started disappearing, and that was the Reagan era, where they was like, yo,
Hey, catch up is a vegetable.
yeah. Like
Yeah,
now in the summer you eat ketchup,
for us,
yeah, but
man,
that's it. Good.
it was crazy, man, and I agree with you 100% because we used to, man, like my one buddy, man, his mother once a month would have like the $1 house parties, and you go up
Mike
in
doing
there,
something.
and we
Yeah, your
would,
mic got low.
and we, huh?
Mike got low.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like one day, like he used to have like the $1 house parties, and we would go up in there, everybody have a ball, have fun, you know what I mean? And it was just like there was no fights. Nobody got shot after the party. You know what I mean? None of this. Very rarely somebody might have gotten into a fight. But then after crack, and the one thing that I remember that used to make me mad because people think that just because we're against the police that we are accepting of the crime that happens in our community. And no, we're not. It's just like why do we have to battle against these idiots and we have to battle against the police that's supposed to protect us from these bastards. You know what I mean?
Smoke and mirrors.
Right.
Every aspect is set up to be like this way. To me, it's all capitalism.
Well, you say capitalism, I say greed. But yeah, man, I mean it all falls in. It all falls in. Once we start to get away from, you know what I mean, the police, then we have to start looking at the DAs. When these police officers are bringing them like these weak cases, and I know we have discussed this before, like, you get picked up on something petty, and you're like, nah, like I ain't do it, and you have a overworked, understaffed public defender telling you, oh well, he's willing to make a deal if you just, you know what I mean, you just plead guilty to this charge, and you're like, nah. So then the DA turns around and hits you with even more charges to try to force you into pleading guilty for the charge that he wants you to have. And if you refuse that, then it's just like, all right, then we go into court. We go to court. I'm gonna try to get the maximum sentence possible for something incredibly petty. There's a judge, and I can't think of her name right now, down in Louisiana, that pretty much accused the DA office of doing of these tactics and telling them like, well, you should have known, you know what I mean? You should have full knowledge of what's going on in this certain community because everybody coming out of this community that you're prosecuting is black. And if they don't take the plea deal, you try to bully them. You know what I mean? Into doing what it is that you want them to do. And the DA gets mad, and now he's trying to have her removed. It's a black judge, and she was like, "No, you know what I mean. Only thing you ever bring into me in my courtroom are black defendants." And I know they're not the only people in this town committing crimes. And it goes back to, again, you know what I mean, where you have these communities that are filled with crime or supposedly filled with crime only because you allow a certain amount of crime to happen there on purpose to keep that community right where they are. And when you have your meetings with the before the police are going out into these communities, they're not talking about, oh, they're like we need to hit Rockville today. We need to go up in Bethesda. You know what I mean? We need to hit this part, the affluent parts of town. No, we're going to go right into like the poor community because we're getting crazy arrests by just stop, frisk, just you know what I mean, just watching, sitting there watching and waiting for people to commit crimes so then we can arrest them. We're not going to these other communities. We know crime is happening. We know the exact same thing that's happening on this side of town is happening on this side of town, but it's easier for us to get these people prosecuted. So when it's time to go and vote, and people are like, oh no, I'm not going to go vote, I'm not going to go vote, guess whose name is on the ballot? The DA. The DA's name is on the ballot. Now, are you watching and seeing what this guy is doing? Because when these police officers are shooting you over traffic stops, it's the DA that decides whether they're going to bring charges against them. It's the judges that decide whether they're going to use qualified immunity or not. Both of their names are on the ballot. So when we're talking about reform, you have to start putting them in there because and if you think that these DAs aren't racist, think again. And just because they're white, you know what I mean, or just because they're black and you think that they're not racist, think again. Because there's a judge that has received NCAA. He went to the Final Four. You know, Martin Luther King Jr. Awards and all of this. And then a local newspaper decided to look at this guy's record, and he gives black people that appear in his court twice the sentence that he gives white that come into his courtroom. He's a black judge being praised by these black uh, associations. Huh?
That come to hers?
Well, you know what? The funny thing is, I was going to ask Scenario about that since he brought up the financial laws. What happened with Kamala Harris and the department, the guy that's the head of Department of Treasury? This is absolutely amazing.
Yeah. Well, there was during the housing crisis, the financial crisis in California, found out that Steve Mnuchin's bank was illegally evicting uh, people from the properties before, prematurely. And her office at the time, I guess she was Attorney General of California by that time, and he was her office said they found about like 1,000 violations by, I think the name was like One West Bank, and they said if they looked even further, they probably find like 1,000 more, and they, recommended her to convict, to investigate him, and she decided not to. And then he gave her like a small donation for, a couple $1,000s, I think, for her senatorial campaign.
How do you fix a system like this?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's why it's like,
you can't fix this.
Yeah.
Everybody's getting money. You know what I'm saying? You either under the foot of the law or you in their back pocket. I mean, how do you fix this?
Right. And Kamala, I remember she, when she ran as district attorney of San Francisco, her, and this is also, just politics or whatever, but she ran as like a, tougher on crime than the incumbent. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's not doing enough to stop, these criminals from knocking your grandmothers over the head.
Yeah.
So, what I'm going to do is put them all under the jail because that's all they're good for. And, and that's not, I mean, then we're talking about the penal system, and then you talk like private prisons and how they connect to ICE and Wall Street. Like, shit is crazy. Like, this is really like when you're dealing with this corruption and, systematic issues, whether it's racism, inequality, whatever. It's really like dealing with like an octopus that's like embedded deep.
This is
So deep, it's just like, yeah. I mean, that's why I'm not mad at people who say just burn it all down, because I understand it. Like, I get it. It's like, it's like I can't. It's hard to make an argument against it, because please, talk about reform. Since I was in high school and Johnny Gamage got killed by the police. I think, was he Ray Seals? Ray Seals, Pittsburgh Steelers offensive lineman's cousin or something. Visiting, he got killed by the police out in the suburbs, and they started like a civilian review board. So I just remember at least like 4 or 5 different civilian review boards that they started, and it all came to nothing. It's kind of like Biden's task force. He did, task force he did with Bernie Sanders. It's just like nothing. It sounds good for people who aren't paying attention, or people who prefer Biden or prefer centrists or whatever. It's like, oh yeah, it sounds good. He's putting the olive branch out to the to the left or whatever, and but it means nothing. Nothing's gonna come out of it, and it's all just comes to suggestions that we got, and we're not gonna take any of these suggestions. So we just wasted everybody's time and people's money. But
it sounds good.
Keep it moving. Yeah, it sounds good for a moment.
Yeah.
While you're paying attention, and then some other shit happens. You're like, Trump said something about soldiers, and then you forget, and you're like, oh yeah, what happened with that task force? And you're like, what task force? What are you talking about?
Yeah, it's like
Yeah, it's crazy.
like oversight.
Your mic again.
Oh wow, I don't know what's going on. It's like oversight. You know what I mean? Everybody talk about oversight, how they want oversight, but you never get oversight. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, but it just
you
went
might
out.
want to check the wire. Yeah, it's not as strong as it was.
Low.
Yeah, but why you trying to figure that out? I mean, I don't personally. I don't know how we fix this broken system, because all we do is talk about symptoms. That disease blood cancer. This country is willing to work this cancer. We always trying to figure out how to put band-aids on it. It's called thru. It sounds good. There's no effect. So let's leave it. I'm not entitled to all these issues, but I'll say something wrong. I really do support that. I'm saying, really tell my wife, you gotta look at elementary something. I'm tired of everything the same old thing. Like I said, candidates are Biden. I really wanted Trump wasn't so big. That's what I was. He had enough stuff.
Right.
Yeah, and 600 a month. You know, the ones that got it.
They got it, right, right.
But
And then they're like, now they're like, yo. And that didn't even last throughout the year. They're just like,
yeah, that's it.
and then they acted like they didn't know it was gonna happen. Like, oh, no word. Oh, okay. Now we got to do something then, right? Yeah. You know, you got to do something. Then it's like, oh yeah, we're really trying to do something, and then it's like, we got vacation, so we'll see y'all next month. But
they gave them trillions. They gave them trillions of dollars.
Right.
Trillions of your dollars. Trillions of your dollars, and then they turn around and preach and talk about, you know what I mean, anti-socialism.
Yeah.
As far as I know, once they take your tax dollars to bail out a private business, that's socialism.
Yeah, they what is it, the airlines and all that?
Yeah.
Like the airlines got bailed out, but now I think this month coming up, sometime this month they're supposed to be having like major layoffs and shit like that. So it's like,
it's coming.
And it's funny because one of my Facebook friends was like, "Yo, cats is out here begging for $1,200. Like, you better find a way to get a bag." And I was like, "Yo, the only reason they gave cats $1,200 is because these rich cats came begging for these billions. If the rich cats didn't come, they wouldn't have did shit." So they're like, "Oh yeah, we got these cats, so we'll do and it's they found like the least they could do because every other quote unquote developed country had something set in place to keep not only most of the citizens okay, but to also keep their economy in in some kind of stasis, so it's not going to take as big a hit as America did. And it's just starting. Really, that's the wild part. It's like economically, it's just starting. So
The sad part is when I listen to them, and this is from Pelosi over to Mitch McConnell. They both say the same thing. We need to get people back to work. There are millions on top of millions of people that don't have a job to go back to. You did everything.
It's not coming back either.
Within a few months, you totally crushed. You know what I mean? The unemployment system, all by shutting down small businesses. These big corporations, they can afford to they can move on. They can afford to keep running. It's the small business, the ones that employ the vast majority of Americans that have shut down. I've watched businesses from restaurants to whatever that have been in business 20, 30 years that within those couple of months are gone. You know what I mean? They couldn't survive. You're talking about, you know what I mean? Then when you start talking about like J.C. Penney, gone. You know what I mean? They're up for bankruptcy. You talk about Remington, a gun. You know what I mean? In a time where you have 20 something million new gun owners. Remington, a gun manufacturer, is going out of business. You know, not only do they manufacture guns, they manufacture ammunition. You know what I mean? These are the things that have made billions of dollars over like the past couple of months, and yet they still can't survive. So when you start talking about keeping the economy going, you have to put money into the pockets of people that actually buy. You know, these like we were talking about it at work. Like they go back and forth on this $1,200. Like this is something, you know what I mean? This is like a major move for them. $1,200 a major move. I can guarantee you probably most of them, unless they took one and like, you know what I mean, got some type of break on like their little flight or whatever. Most of them spent more than that on their trip home from DC back to wherever it is that they live. Just the plane ride.
Some of them cats spent that on lunch.
Exactly. But then when it comes down to handing it to you, like I just read some little thing, Mike Bloomberg is about to spend like $100 million on something stupid. I forgot what it was. And I'm like, dude, do you know how many people you could actually help? But no, you're going to do that in ads. You know what I mean? You want to take out ads. You know what I mean? You want to advertise. You're going to spend $100 million in advertising, and yet the people that you claim when you were trying to run for president, you claimed that you were going to help. Not a dime of that money is going to go help them.
Oh no, he played his own staff for his campaign. He's like, oh yeah, I'm going to pay out through September or something like that, and then he's like, peace. You know, that's what cats do.
Amazon gift cards.
You'd be lucky if they got that.
Probably half the value when it stay on the card.
Right, exactly. Like, half used already.
Yeah.
You know.
But when we're talking about some of these things for like reform, that the
mic just went down again.
Yeah. Really? Okay. When we're talking about some of the things that we need for like reform, you have to actually realize that a lot of like these businesses, when you look at Comcast, you look at AT&T, you look at Uber, you look at Lyft, they are spending millions of dollars to get laws passed so that you don't get help. You know what I mean? They're actually campaigning against you.
Whatever you just did, don't move.
All right, yeah. They're actually a lot of like these Fortune 500 companies spend money so that you don't get help. They're actually spending money against you. Against, you know what I mean? And it doesn't make sense because you are the economy. We are the economy.
Yeah, it's like my bad. Let me. But like the airlines lobby to make the seat sizes put more seats in the aisles and make the spaces smaller. So yeah, it's wild. Yeah.
And they also lobbied against not having you sit on the runway for hours at a time. I don't know if any of y'all ever taken a flight like just sitting on the runway for 45 minutes, man. That air, man, just starts to get thinner and thinner, and it's hotter and hotter on that joint, and you're like, yo, why did we board? Why did we board if we're not going nowhere?
Yeah. Because they can.
Exactly.
Because they can.
Exactly.
They got the money. They bought the politicians, and you didn't. Rich people fly their own planes. Yep. Yeah. That's probably what you're waiting on for them to get out. Exactly. Yeah. No, because it's wild. There's an airport right by me, the Van Nuys Airport, and it's like in the flight path of L.H.S. because I see like mad planes flying overhead. And for a while, I was like, yo, they're going to Van Nuys. I don't remember any flights out of Van Nuys. I only go to Van Nuys to like catch the flyaway to get to LAX. But I found out Van Nuys is just like all private planes, helicopters, like news helicopters and things like that. So it's like, yeah, they, a lot of times they don't even have to go to your, they don't go to the airport like we do. They go straight to their hangar. So, yeah. So they leave you on the runway and they pull off. Right.
Just about all of like your representatives are millionaires. So when you take that into account, and you want them to recognize and understand what it is that the average citizen goes through, they have no idea. So when they're talking about giving out, $600 on top of unemployment, it's just like, why would we give them $600 when you drop that? On a bottle of wine. On a bottle of wine.
Yeah.
Like, you
Yeah.
mean to tell me
But,
that this person's life
drink.
isn't
Some
worth.
whiskey. Some good whiskey. Right.
And so yes, this becomes a major problem when you're talking about like how do we fix the system? The only way to fix the system is to get all of these people out. Was to get all of these people out. And people like, oh man, how come they won't change like financing and all like these little laws for people to be able to donate money to like for like political uh, um, for like the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, and so on and so forth. Why would they? When you really think about it, why would they? Why would I cut off, you know what I mean, a major stream of money coming to me because it doesn't benefit you?
Right. And that's money that makes me accountable to less people. I only got 5 people I'm accountable to now, as opposed to 500,000 people in my district or whatever. It's like, I only got to listen to these dudes, cool, and I get paid on top of that. Okay. And that's part of the the rotten. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, I feel you. Like, it's not. Yeah, man. I mean, I'm starting to feel like how the gods on earth talk about the colored man, like he can't be reformed.
This system can't be reformed. I don't know. I don't know how you get people to have integrity when they don't.
Right.
When you get off of that badge, and you're looking at it, you got a whole constituency of people that you got to think about. But he's slipping this bag in your pocket. What you gonna do? And these people don't have no integrity. Even if they started out with good intentions,
Right.
or the other thing they get them to is with the blackmail. They get you cheating on your wife. They get you, they put these things in place, get you in these compromising positions. So what you gonna do? You let this bill pass, then in a minute, you're gonna be out like WikiLeaks.
Right.
I'm saying, what you gonna do? You got your family watching. You gonna take this bag and shut up, or
Right.
you gonna let this slide?
Yeah,
Right.
And option 3 is you just disappear. All of a sudden, you know what I mean? You're in a really bad, 10-car accident.
Or that plane go down, and
Exactly, a boating accident, hunting
yeah,
accident.
they can't find nothing.
Right. No black box, nothing.
Yeah.
You can't find a wing. You can't find nothing.
It's a wicked system right here, y'all. I don't know how. I mean, like I say, we ain't gonna solve the whole problem. So, what can you do, piece by piece, to start picking at this thing?
Right.
You have to pick.
Yeah, that's a question. Yeah. That actually is a good topic for another show.
Yeah.
I could start looking into like what people are actually doing to fight, to do something that's substantive to fight the system.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, man. Because that's the only thing I'm thinking about. I'm just like, how can I get overseas? How can I get my son overseas with me? And that's pretty much it. Like,
the banks are against you.
Yeah, I don't know.
The police are against you. The DAs,
Yeah.
the judges, your politicians, you know what I mean, are all against you. So they've knocked out the legs, you know what I mean, of our communities. We don't even really, and I said I'm going to stop saying it because we don't actually really have too many communities anymore. There are very few black communities left in America. And by that I mean, of course, everybody wants to say like the poor part of the city, that's the black community. It's not our community because we don't really own anything there. DC, we used to have a community in DC until like they start kicking everybody out so they could build stadiums. So now you still have like a large amount of black people that live in DC, but how many of those black people actually own anything in DC? So we don't really have too many black communities, a real black community left in America. I know down in Georgia they have started up some. You know, is a couple of towns right outside of Atlanta that have tried to build that are building black communities, actual black communities where blacks own homes, blacks are part of the municipality, blacks are in charge of the police department, blacks are in charge of their own politics. That's a black community. Anytime like you are forced to only be able to live in one part of a county, one part of the city, one part or certain towns within the county, that's not yours. If you're renting, that's not yours. If you don't own business there, it's not yours. That's not our community. That's their community. That's just an area that they have designated for us to live in. Because once you make a certain amount of money or you get your credit straight and you want to move over here to this community, all of a sudden now you got to go to the bank and the bank is like looking at like, you know what I mean, where you want to live, like that's where I live. Nah, denied. You know what I mean? They got some houses over here. You can get this HUD house over this joint back over in the red district. You know, then you have like mayors that shut down governors to shut down different avenues and roads for us to be able to move out of these poor, dilapidated communities. This whole system is set up for us to fail, 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 fail.
I agree. Yeah. Did you hear about the I don't know, like the 19 families down there somewhere that?
Yeah, it's down in Georgia. Yeah, that's another one. You know what I mean? That's one of the ones in Georgia. But like me personally,
Trying to fight them to stop
are you surprised?
I think Willie D had it on his show that he was talking that they trying to do something with the permits or something to stop it. And, they mad because they trying to buy this land and set up this black community. It's like a no-win situation here.
Yeah, I mean, are you surprised by that?
Yeah, history shows that every time you set up a place and you separate yourself because we can't live with you without you, oppressing us, and y'all still mad. We're gonna destroy it. We're gonna bomb you. We're gonna do whatever we got to do to stop you from succeeding. And history also has shown that anytime you leave us alone, we will have communities and successful and family, and we're okay. So to me, they really just don't want any competition. And to me, it all goes back to capitalism. It all goes back to the wealthy 1% at the top of this pyramid, and everybody else fighting over the scraps. And I think it was somebody said it to me, gave me an example of this, that if you got $100 and that's all the money you got in the economy, and for this 1% to have 90% of it, then they leave $10 for the other 90% to fight over.
Right.
And crime is just a symptom of poverty.
Yeah.
Like all this stuff is just symptoms. The system is set up to so the rich stay rich, the poor white and the average white, they tell them at least you white and you not black, so you better than them, so don't worry, because I still take that dollar out your back pocket, you good, you still white. So we all fight each other over this illusion of this American dream, which is simply the Powerball. They tell you can win, but it's really set up for everybody to fail.
Everybody has to be Jay the Mockingbird, you know what I mean? And you got to fight to survive up in here where they televise the whole thing. Yeah, it's crazy out here. But
I bet they just laugh. I bet these rich jokers gonna sit up in their $1 billion mansions and on their yachts and just laugh at these white supremacists. They probably laugh at all these, us fighting each other, why they, like you said, they spent $100 million on a watch or something, and they laugh at us fighting over the scraps they left behind.
Right.
well, yeah, yeah, because you take Buffett, you take Bezos, you take what's his name from Microsoft, any of the top five from Microsoft, or Apple. And if they never made another dollar a day in their lives, they will still be percentile of the richest people in the world. And imagine if somebody else was able to make, you know what I mean, that money, you know what I mean, that money stream was not even cut off, but slowed down so that everybody else was able to make $100,000 and live comfortably. Guess what? They will still be filthy rich. They will still it will not take away from their wealth or their status at all to allow someone else to eat. And that right there is the problem. Is that the greed is gotten to like such a point where you don't even want somebody else to eat. You know, my final comment because we got to wrap, huh?
Yeah, it's even worse because you got people that's fighting over the scraps arguing that, you know what I'm saying, arguing about other motherfuckers eating. Like, oh, they eat? I work 18 hours a day and they eat? Like, yeah, everybody should eat. Like, what are you talking about? Everybody should eat. It's like, oh, where they work at McDonald's and they want $15 an hour? I'm like, yeah, that's everybody should be making more money. Like, wages have been stagnant for like 4 decades, you know? So it's like,
Right, and they fight that.
right. Just like, oh, $15 an hour. So it's like, yeah, there's, yeah, it's crazy, man. I mean, yeah. But I know you gotta wrap it up. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So hopefully, man, we can come back, like you said, man, and revisit this, man, with, do like some type of brainstorming. But the only way, man, is to blow it up, and there's only one other way, you know what I mean, that could ever happen. And, with power has to be taken. It is never given up. It's never just handed over. Power has to be taken. And the only way that this system can ever be reformed, reshaped, anything you can put behind the word re, you know what I mean, is only going to come one way, and that is it has to be taken back from the 1%. And most people aren't really ready for that, and most people aren't really trained for that. Or when you're talking about a military that fights for this type of thing, you have to stop and ask yourself how many of these people are willing to come home and kill their own citizens. And he's like, oh, they wouldn't do that. They wouldn't do this. They wouldn't do that. And then I tell you, well, check out Louisiana, check out Alabama, check out Mississippi, check out Houston during like the during Karina, Katrina when that joint came through. Um, check out what's going on in Portland. Check out like the tanks that's rolling through like the cities in Minneapolis. If you don't think that the military will be used in order to quash any power or opportunity for you to even try to take power or take back power out of the hands of like these incredibly wicked people. Today I was watching a football game and I seen this incredible commercial. It was a Ford commercial. It was talking about Ford. Was talking about you know Americans needed more horsepower because horses couldn't travel far enough, so they built a car. Americans needed this, so then they built, a better car. Then they built a truck, and they built this, and they built that. And America needed, they used their trucks to build the highways, and they used, Ford to build this and Ford to build that. And I'm watching the commercial, and I'm laughing to myself, like, this is a bunch of BS because I don't see not one black face in this commercial. And that right there is one of the biggest problems within this system, because if people were educated on what it is that we have done, why they're telling us to go back to Africa, not knowing that we were already here before they got here. You know, y'all lazy, y'all good for nothing. You have a president that said that we were only lazy, only good for sex and stealing. And he's in office and they're ready to try to reelect him. You know, when you start talking about these, like you said, the symptoms of everything, it all comes back to, what I mean, being held down in darkness, and the vast majority of it is voluntary. You have people that are incredibly ignorant, and they're ignorant because they will love to remain ignorant. When you look at the things that we have done and the way that we were able to build this country for centuries, for centuries, and just to ask for justice, just to ask for equality, people are ready to take up their arms, and you have a sitting congressman saying that, yeah, I would love for you to come marching through my town talking about some equality. I wouldn't even spill my beer. you know what I mean, to pick up my gun and knock 10 of you down. You know, you have, oh, yes, he did. Yes, he did. And then he started putting up pictures of him and his militia. He meant every last word of it. You have a president that said that I can shoot somebody on, what was it, on 5th Street, 25th Street, and walk home. And nobody is going to come and arrest me. People know what's going on in this country. So when the police chokes you out, well, I'm sitting here watching this video before we even started, when, you know what I mean, this man is getting arrested. He's at the cash register in line buying his son's bike. They tase him, they lock him up, and he's like, I don't understand why. And they're like, well, you're in custody. He was like, how can I be in custody when you stood right there and watched me pay for this bike? Locked him up at the register. Oh, and he's going to go before a judge. He's going to go, that case is going to get kicked to a DA, and the DA is going to do everything he can to make sure that this dude gets a charge, any old charge. Whether like one of the officers says, oh, well, he kicked me, you know what I mean, while we were putting them in the car, that's assaulting the police. Now we got a felony on him. They're going to try to hit him with any old charge. It doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Walmart cameras are on him. I don't know how many people are standing there with their cell phones watching them arrest this guy after he paid for the bike. They're going to try to put a charge on him. They're going to try to get him with any old thing that they possibly can. And the judge is going to uphold it. And not only is the judge going to uphold it, they're going to send him to the prison. And once he gets to the prison, the bank is going to be able to make money off of him. If anybody goes to put money in this commissary, the telecommunications are going to make money off of him. If he tries to call home and want to collect call, the food industry, Armark, they're going to make money off of him every time he goes to eat. You know what I mean? You have textiles that's going to make money off of him when he goes to get that uniform. And then you have a parole system that's going to make money off of him if they let him out early. Because he's going to have to pay that fee every month. This is a system that is seriously flawed, and it's not, and we see it as flawed. They see it as a beautiful working machine because it works for them. This whole system of oppression puts money in so many people's pockets. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's the way it's supposed to work.
It is.
I really wanted my comments to be concise and within 2 minutes, so I'm sorry for running.
It's your show, man.
Yeah. New, man. Close this out, man. Yeah, he closes it, man. What your final thoughts, man?
Oh, I think everybody pretty much said most of what needs to be said already. The only thing that I would add at this point doesn't have to do with black people per se, but the Julian Assange trial. Speaking of WikiLeaks, the Julian Assange trial is going on. They're trying to extradite him to America to face some bogus charges. We're basically exposing war crimes and corruption in the U.S. systems, but also in countries all across the world. And WikiLeaks has never had to redact or go back and make changes to any of their reports. They've all been 100% factual. So this is actually a really big
Travesty of justice.
Exactly, that's what I was getting. Great travesty of justice, and it's only going to make it worse for anybody else who considers himself a journalist, because you can get grabbed up for doing basically what what he did was no different than what any other journalist does to get information. It's not illegal for a civilian to get classified information and print it. That's what journalists do all the time. That's how Nixon got brought down with the Watergate scandal. You know what I'm saying? So just you don't have to like watch it every day, but just keep an eye on it and know that these are just like with things that happen to black people in America. I know eventually that it's going to come back to the rest of America, and now they're starting to see that with the National Guard and things like that at their protests. and it's only going to happen to journalists next. So, yeah, it's gonna. I can't say it's gonna get better, man. It just looks like it's getting worse. I wish I could be more positive about it, but like like Donnie says, I'm just thinking, trying to think of a way out. I'm starting to think like Nas and Belly. You know what I'm saying? It's like, yo, you know what I'm saying? It's crazy. Yeah, that's it. But yeah.
Don?
I just close with this. I'm closing something positive. We all know it's messed up. The problem is capitalism, which is the cancer, and everything else is a symptom. But I think it'll change, and I said this before Trump got elected. I know this was a clown before he got in office, and I really couldn't believe. I remember telling my wife and my son when they went to bed, "Oh, y'all go ahead and go to bed. It's gonna be all right. He's not gonna win this." So then I woke up to my shock, and the rest of the world, this dude actually won. And I said to myself, this country gets what they deserve.
Right.
They're gonna have to hurt, and they're gonna have to hurt, and everybody's gonna have to hurt before they stand up and make a change. Change happens over time, and it can happen, and it's a collective effort, and it only happens when everyone gets tired and people start protesting, and I don't care if they ride. I mean, to me, that's the only thing they really show is stuff getting burned down and tore up. And I think more changes happen since these riots happening, since George Floyd could happen in this country in a long time. So there is hope.
Right.
We just got to stay vigilant and keep moving forward. So peace and blessings to everybody, and I'm staying prayed up for myself, my family, for this country, and for this world.
That's a beautiful thing, man.
Well said. Well
Yes,
said.
indeed. All right, man. We out.
All right, peace, family.
All right, peace.